So because what determines the caps and the participation rates is the call option market, the call options that the carrier is buying from these investment banks, I would argue two different things. Number one is if the call option budget is the same across all strategies within XYZ product. And number two, if call option markets are efficient markets hypothesis. You can punch that into the Google machine. You'll see what I mean by that. You learn that in basically Finance 101 back in college, right? Now, I went to UNI. That's not necessarily Harvard Business School, but I do know what efficient markets hypothesis means. And if call option markets are efficient, if the call option budget is the same regardless of the strategy within that product, then I would argue whether it's the S&P 500 strategy with a cap of 7% or it's the super duper volatility control strategy with a gazillion percent participation rate, they are going to perform the same over the long run, at least if call option markets are efficient. Now, you're probably saying to me, so you mean to tell me that a gazillion percent participation rate on this index and a 7% cap, 100% participation rate on the S&P 500, that they're going to perform the same over the long run? Charlie, I want what you're smoking there, right? That's exactly what I'm saying. And this is why you have to know which of these strategies are Sizzle, which one of those strategies or which ones of those strategies are steak. Look at that beautiful tomahawk chop. Isn't that beautiful? That's a ribeye, my favorite cut of meat here. So let me show you a drawing here. Let me show you a drawing of what I mean. This usually brings it home for a lot of folks that don't really understand volatility control strategies very well. I'm going to demonstrate the S&P 500 and I'm going to demonstrate the super duper volatility control uncapped strategy with a gazillion percent participation rate. So first of all, you have the S&P 500. It is pretty volatile, right? At least relative to what I'm going to show you here in a bit. The volatility in the S&P 500 over time has had a standard deviation, I think around 18 or so. Standard deviation is a measure of risk. If the market goes up X percent per year on average, it doesn't do that in a straight line. Standard deviation measures basically the deviation from the average or from the mean. Okay, so that's the S&P 500. Now we have our super duper volatility control strategy, which maybe has a standard deviation of 5 or 6 or 7 or 10. By the way, those numbers that are usually in the title of these volatility control strategies, those mean something. That's generally the standard deviation, right? So what happens when the market, when this index, the volatility control, our little lines there, when volatility gets beyond, say, their number, a 5% standard deviation, well, then what they do is they position what constitutes the index is more of bonds or cash, for example, than maybe the equities. That is how they control the volatility. When the markets get really volatile, they move it into like the bond market or cash. By the way, the bond market, the AGG is down 11% year to date. You're going to find on clients' annual statements that even the volatility control strategies are not going to perform very well this year. But hey, a 0 is better than a negative 10, 11, or negative 25%, which is what the S&P 500 is down year to date. Nowhere has been safe, and that's certainly reflected in these volatility control strategies. Okay, so which one would you choose? Would you choose the volatile market or the non-volatile market? 9 times out of 10, what you're going to say is, well, the non-volatile market, Charlie, it's supposed to be safe money here. I would argue that's not true because remember, with an indexed annuity or an IUL, the downs, the negatives, as I just demonstrated here, you don't have any of those. I've blacked out the negatives there, right? So now when I ask that question, 9 times out of 10, people say, well, I'll definitely take the volatile market, the S&P 500. Why is that? Because the S&P 500, the high volatility is what gives us the upside, and if 0 is our downside, why would you not go with a volatile one? Well, you would not go with a volatile one because not all else is equal, right? Because the volatile one has caps of, let's say, 7%. So we're also blacking out everything above, say, 7% in our example here. So now let me ask you the question, which one would you rather have, the S&P 500 with a cap of 7% or the low volatility strategy here that has a participation rate of 150%, 200%, a gazillion percent? The answer to that question is then, I don't know. It depends. And this, folks, is where you have a lot of marketing sizzle Now, I like volatility control strategies, but you have to know which ones are just marketing sizzle and which ones are actually stake. Because make no mistake, if there was an uncapped S&P 500 strategy with 100% participation rate, that is a ton of steak, and that's good steak. That's like a tomahawk ribeye there, right? That I'd put on my smoker, and it'd be delicious here. Hey folks, if you like this video, make sure you subscribe and like below. Also, if you're an agent wanting to do business with indexed annuities or IUL, make sure you call us at CG Financial Group, and I can get you reports on the various indexes out there and also help you with which ones are more stake and which ones are more sizzle.